Min Mario Max Moons is one of the hardest and coolest categories in Super Mario Odyssey, and over the past month, I have spent countless hours trying to bring this category to its absolute limit. Now, if you haven't already seen the first video where I detailed the initial run, I highly recommend watching that video first so you have more context moving forward. But essentially, we just grab as many moons as possible with captures and as few moons as possible with Mario. But before we actually get into the hardest of the post-game moons, a few more Mario moons have actually been saved since the last video. When the previous video came out, there were 27 Mario moons in the run, but not even a day after the video came out, 3 of those Mario moons were saved. Relaxmas discovered that we can get this multi-moon as a chain chomp. And to do this, you first have to beat the boss, then you can perform a glitch called Cappy Return Cancel. Now, this glitch is fairly complicated, and I'll leave a link in the description to a video that gives an actual in-depth explanation of it, but essentially it just teleports Cappy really far away. Now, we can actually use this glitch to hit the globe with Cappy and allow us to escape the arena. So now that we're out of the arena, all that's left to do is to bring a chain chomp inside of the arena. But how could we do that? Well, this is actually possible using a glitch called chain chomp displacement, where you can move a chomp inside the other, unload it, then when you look back, it'll slide in a direction indefinitely. So using this glitch, we can send the chomp flying towards the moon, and then all that's left for us to do is to just capture the chomp and slide into the moon. But it's not as simple as it may seem. For those of you who don't know, there are 2 main versions of the game, 1.0 being the earliest version of the game, and 1.3 being the most updated version. And since 1.0 is the earliest version of the game, it obviously contains more glitches than 1.3, since a large majority of them were patched out as the game was updated. And unfortunately, chain chomp displacement has been patched out of the most recent version. So while it's possible for these moons to be saved on 1.0, it's not possible as of yet on 1.3. Before this discovery, there were 27 Mario moons across all versions, but it's now been split up into 2 different runs depending on the version you're playing on, where the minimum for 1.0 is 24 and the minimum for 1.3 is 27. But that's not the only discovery since the last video. Sand Kingdom has been turned upside down because of 2 newly proven moons. We used to need 6 Mario moons to leave the kingdom, so we just grabbed both multi-moons as our Mario moons. But both the Crate Moon and the Alcove Moon have been proven possible with a bullet bill, therefore reducing the required Mario moons in the kingdom down to 4. And these moons are only possible due to a weird mechanic of the bullet bills. If you fly into a downward slanted wall, the bills just don't explode against them and instead move downwards. So for the Alcove Moon, we just slide down on this icicle, which barely makes us low enough to get the moon. Let's go! Let's go! Oh my gosh. I cannot believe that just worked. I cannot believe that just worked. However, the Crate Moon is slightly more complicated. There seems to be no slanted wall for the bills to go down, right? However, if you collect either the first multi-moon or the tower moon, multiple platforms spawn over the void. And one of these platforms spawns at just the right height to lure a bullet bill over, slide down against it, and barely leave enough time to collect the moon. Let's go! Oh my gosh, that took way too long. That took way too long. So with these 2 newly proven moons, the new route for Sand is to get the 9 possible capture moons when you first arrive, get the multi-moon as Mario, get the remaining 3 capture moons in Night, and then 1 random Mario moon, which equals 4 Mario moons required to leave Sand Kingdom. However, this once again isn't as simple as it seems. This route isn't entirely possible on 1.0, and you know why? Because one of the capture moons we get is the Cactus Moon. Should be easy, right? Just walk into the moon with a cactus. but for some strange reason, in the 1.0 version of the game, the cactus capture can't collect moons. And as of right now, there's no method that allows us to get that moon with any other capture pre-piece. So given how this makes one less capture moon possible in 1.0, there's now one extra Mario moon required in 1.0, equaling 5 Mario moons required to leave the kingdom. So with all that being said, the current fully updated Mario moon totals for both versions of the game are 23 for 1.0 and 25 for 1.3. But it is also worth noting that bringing it down to 22 Mario moons is technically possible. This can be done by getting the Cascade multi-moon in 1.0 and then updating the game to 1.3 so you can get the Cactus moon. And now that you're all caught up, we can finally dive into the hardest of the post-game Min Mario moons. First up is Cap Kingdom. And this kingdom mostly contains straightforward moons, but there is one exception. Under the Big One's brim seems to have no captures anywhere near it. Neither the Paragoomba nor the frog can get anywhere near enough height to reach it. However, there is a single 1.0 exclusive glitch that does allow this moon to be gotten. In 1.0, the frog swimming mechanics can get a little finicky, and if you land in the water just right after bouncing off another frog, you can actually start swimming in midair. Using this, we can swim along the side of the tower to get higher and higher until eventually we're high enough to jump right into the moon. Next up is Cascade Kingdom, and this kingdom is way worse than it looks. Let's take this moon for example. This moon is just out of reach with the T-Rex, and the only other available captures are chain chomps, and they're all chained to the ground. Now, in 1.0, you could just use the previously mentioned chain chomp displacement glitch to get this moon, but since I'm on 1.3, I can't do that. This was a real bummer, because there are several other moons around the kingdom that can't be gotten with the T-Rex, but could be gotten with this glitch if I were on 1.0. So if I wanted any shot to collect all of these moons that were just out of reach, I would have to discover an entirely new glitch just to make it happen. So that's exactly what I did. I tried idea after idea after idea until eventually I just tried holding a single direction on the controller out of desperation. And it worked. Turns out, despite being chained to the ground, if you have the patience to hold any given direction long enough, the chomps will very slowly just keep moving in that direction indefinitely. We've decided to call this glitch Chain Chomp Overextension, and I used it to get this moon under the cliff, which took roughly 15 minutes by the way. On the plus side, when I moved the chomp off this side of the cliff to get the other moons, for some reason the chomp started moving much faster and I was easily able to get 2 other moons in the kingdom. Now, before we go to the next kingdom, there's still one more moon of interest in this one. This moon is pretty simple in theory, but really cool when you finally pull it off. Whenever you hit one of these clouds, it stays expanded for a short period of time. Because of this, we can actually juggle hitting open these clouds with recapturing the T-Rex to barely get ourselves across and collect the moon.
All right. Ah! Let's go! I got it. Let's go. All right.
The next kingdom is Sand Kingdom, but since we're no longer able to collect both multi-moons, we're permanently locked in Night Sand, so there's not much else we can do here. Moving on to Wooded Kingdom, this kingdom contains one of the coolest multi-moons in the run. After defeating Spewart, this multi-moon is on the top of a tower in the middle of the void, with no capture target in sight. Now, if we could somehow get a Fire Bro on the top of the kingdom, we could jump down onto the tower from here, but sadly, it doesn't seem like any of the Fire Bros can make it to the top. But luckily, the Invincibro can. Yeah, you heard me right, the Invincibro. That's the name we decided to call this Fire Bro right here. Why, you ask? Because people figured out that if you could manage to escape this Fire Bro from his cage, then for some reason he would become invincible. And there actually is a way to break him out. If you clip into this wall right here, you can fall into his cage from out of bounds. But more importantly, we're inside the cage with Cappy. And if we had gone in the normal way, we would not be able to bring Cappy inside, and therefore, we wouldn't be able to capture the Fire Bro. So once inside, we capture the Fire Bro and put him on the red platform. Once this is done, he's in his invincible state. Now to get him out, we just clip Cappy through the wall and hit the Scarecrow to lower the door. So now we have access to the Invincibro, but how exactly does that help us? He can't jump any higher than the other Fire Bros, and he's actually even lower than both of them, so what can we do? Well, if you put the Invincibro in a corner, since he can't be killed when you jump on him, jumping on him repeatedly actually causes him to rise along the side of the wall. And we can actually do this multiple times to eventually get him to the very top. Once there, we can just jump down to the tower, leave him on the inside of the arena before triggering the fight, and then once we trigger it, he'll stay there waiting for us. Now, after spawning the multi-moon, we can then finally capture the Invincibro and hop into the moon. Sadly, as of now, there's no way to get the second multi-moon, but there are still some challenging moons in the kingdom, and one of which is the elevator blind spot. Now, we can get insultingly close with the tank, but we just can't get ourselves up on the ledge to actually get it. This moon seems hopeless because the only other capture target in the sub area are Fire Bros, and they're 2 levels below the moon with no way back up. But just because the Fire Bros can't get back up, doesn't mean the Hover Bros can't. Yeah, the Fire Bros are kind of broken. Turns out, if you hit a Fire Bro into just about any movable item or capture, they'll just begin to hover, hence the name Hover Bro. So, if we put the tank in a very specific spot and hit the Fire Bro into it at just the right angle, he'll begin to hover up straight towards the moon. And since we need to go up 2 levels, we need 2 Hover Bros. One to get up the first level, and the other to get up the second.
Please. Oh, okay. So I should get this guy first, right? Yeah, definitely. Because he's going higher. Okay. Oh, yeah, I could 2B jump. This one might make it. Is he up there? No. Okay. Well, I gotta use my feet, I guess. Okay. There we go. Alright. Well, I should get it. There we go. Easy, easy. In my sleep. In my sleep.
Following Wooded Kingdom is Lake Kingdom, but Lake Kingdom only had exactly enough moons for us to initially leave, with the rest being locked behind the multi-moon. And as of right now, the multi-moon is currently impossible to get with a capture. Now, we do have some working theories for how we could potentially get it in the future, but I'll cover that in the next video where I'll go over all of the impossible Mario moons. There's no moons possible in Cloud Kingdom, and nothing really worth noting in Lost, but Metro Kingdom may very well be the most difficult kingdom in this run. Every capture in Metro is either stagnant or trapped in an enclosed area, making this kingdom seem impossible. However, there is a method to escape the letter captures from the park. By putting the scooter on the M, you can move the M right next to another letter, which then pushes that letter through the barrier after capturing it. Now, we have the letters out, but the letters can't jump, so they're pretty limited on where they can go. The only hope for actually getting any moons with them is with hyperspeed. You can cause the letters to fly extremely fast in random directions by running out of a taxi. So with this, we could theoretically get some moons in the kingdom by getting really lucky and flying straight into them, since there's no way to actually control where you go. At least that's what we thought. After a lot of messing around with this glitch, I actually managed to find a method to somewhat control your trajectory. If you escape the R and the A from the park, put the R right next to a taxi and walk out of the taxi with the A into the R, you can bounce off of the R in whichever angle the R is facing. After launching, you can then uncapture the A mid-air and the letter will fall straight down. Now, while this is a method, it is still very inconsistent and still requires quite a lot of luck, but that didn't stop me. I managed to prove 12 moons in the kingdom using this method. These were brutal to get and took me a very long time. There's a playlist in the description where you can see all 12 of the moons, but in this video, I'm only going to showcase 2 of them. The first one is the Girder Moon, and this one took me the longest out of them all. I spent a total of 18 hours trying to get this, and keep in mind, I only get 1 attempt each time. If I miss and fly past the moon, I have to respawn and escape both of the letters again, which makes each attempt take way longer than it should.
Oh, no way. No way. Oh, no freaking way. Yes, 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 yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, yes. Oh, real quick, I think you might have forgotten to hit the subscribe button and to like the video and share with your friend and ring the bell, so I just wanted to quickly remind you. Okay, thanks. The second moon is my personal favorite because I got extremely lucky. This moon should have taken me the longest, but only took me a couple of hours because of this luck. Landing next to this pot doesn't let me get the moon, so in order to get this one, I would need to land on the extremely small water tower right next to it. But when I fly towards the water tower, I have to go through a building, and when I go through this building, the camera gets locked, causing me to have to land on it blind. But against all odds, I somehow managed to pull it off. Oh. Please, please, please. Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Yo, let's go. Oh my gosh, yes, yes. Now, we've been using the letters to prove a bunch of moons, but what about the letter moon itself? You see, the letter's original purpose was to spell out Mario, which would then spawn a moon. But when all the letters are in place, you can no longer capture them. So how could we even get this moon? Well, the answer is very complicated. Discovering how to get this moon was like one giant puzzle, but in the end, I did end up figuring it out. You can check out this video to see the full attempt, but I'll try my best to explain it here. So the first step is to escape one of the letters from the park, and then use hyperspeed to push the RC car out of the track. Next, you use the hat to push the RC car all the way over to the park, which can be very tedious. You then put the letters in this formation in this exact spot, and I'll explain why in a second. Now, push the RC car in between these three letters. After all of that is done, you can then go grab the purse and switch into 2-player mode. Now just push the RC car against the M with the purse as much as you can, and capture the M by flying Cappy into it with the second controller. If done right, this will cause the RC car to slide up onto the M. Now, the RC car will stay there as long as it stays unloaded, which means we can't have it on the screen again. Now, we just carefully capture each letter without loading the RC car and put them in their place. After all of the letters are put up, the moon should then spawn right where the RC car is hovering. Now, all that's left to do is to capture the man to control the RC car. However, there is a slight problem. We won't actually get the moon since the RC car is still unloaded. And once we capture the man, the camera becomes locked, which prevents us from loading it. But luckily, the solution is really simple. We can just turn the camera as we capture the man before the camera becomes locked and finally grab the moon. And with that, that's all I'm gonna cover in Metro Kingdom, so now let's move on to Snow Kingdom. This first moon is very deceiving because it looks way easier than it actually is. This moon looks to be easily accessible to the bonsai bills since we already know they can go up and down slopes without exploding. However, this slope for some reason causes them to explode if the angle you go into it isn't exactly right, making this moon way harder than it should be. And after attempting to get this precise angle for 45 minutes, I accidentally got it just by randomly flying into it. Send it. Oh, well, I got it. Okay, well, that's stupid. This next moon also feels like it relies heavily on random chance. After beating the game, this Chevarian racer no longer spawns up in this area, and in its place is a moon. This is a problem because in order to get this moon, we would somehow need to bring this Chevarian racer all the way back up there where he was never intended to go post-game. Now, getting up the first level has been proven for a while by just building up speed between the ceiling and the floor to eventually get up. However, getting up the next level was never proven until I decided to give it a shot, and my strategy to get up? Chaos. Oh, no way! I just got it! Let's go! Yo! That worked out so well. Let's go. Oh my gosh, let's go. That's so hype.
Moving on to Seaside Kingdom, a large majority of the kingdom is locked behind this multi-moon, but surprisingly, this moon can be gotten. After beating the boss, we're enclosed in this tiny area with no way out. However, we can clip Cappy out in 2-player mode. Now, if we could just capture an enemy, we could escape, but there's no enemy that spawns close enough to the chalice. But that's not gonna stop us. As it turns out, if we bring a Gushin right next to the chalice, and then spray it with water from another Gushin, the Gushin will no longer despawn and will instead stay right where we placed it. This then will allow us to capture the Gushin from inside the chalice, and as long as we don't touch the ground before capturing, we'll be bubbled beneath the cup rather than where we were last standing. After that, we can just go to Captain Toad's platform and then fly straight to the multi-moon. Another moon worth noting is this moon inside of the chalice. This is another 1.0 exclusive moon because it once again requires a glitch that's been patched out. If you bounce on this Gushin right as it spawns, it'll spawn in the ground and no longer have collision with any walls. So if we make our way to the hot springs water and fly towards the moon, we'll be able to fly right through the side of the chalice and into the moon. Now, we finally arrived in Luncheon Kingdom, which contains the hardest moon in the run. But before I cover that, I want to first go over this multi-moon, which is also possible. As you may have already put together, we're going to use a glitch that's already previously been mentioned, that glitch being the hover bro. Similar to Wooded Kingdom, if we hit this pan bro into a turnip, he'll begin to hover. So if you place the turnip in just the right spot and hit the pan bro into it at just the right angle, you can get the hover bro to fly towards the pot. If done right, you can capture the meat to get onto the pot and then capture the hover bro on the very edge of it. Then just carefully make your way across the vegetables to eventually get the moon. Now there's various other moons around the kingdom to get with hover bros, but I'm just gonna talk about one in particular, that being the Painting Island. This is the hardest moon in the run, and I'd argue that this is one of the hardest moons in any category. I spent a total of 63 hours attempting to get this single moon. And once again, I have a video of the full attempt in the playlist, but I'll quickly go over the whole thing here. Now, we can fairly easily hit a hover bro towards the island, but the only problem is getting back to the island to capture it. There were multiple theories for how to do this, but we did eventually come up with a strategy. Assist mode always bubbles you back onto the last ground you were standing on. So if we could somehow do the hover bro glitch while having our safe spot set on the island, we could just be bubbled back up to it. So to pull this off, we first have to make a fairly difficult jump to the mainland from the island. And to make this jump, we just jump out as close as we can to the mainland and then use 2-player mode to fly Cappy into the lava bubble. After this, we need to somehow grab a turnip, put it in the perfect place, and then hit the pan bro into it without ever touching the ground. Luckily, however, these cheese blocks don't set your safe spot since they can break, so we can actually use these to stand on. So now we're at the hardest part. In order to bring a turnip all the way over there, we need to turnip surf. To do this, we bounce off the turnip as high as we can while at the same time grabbing the turnip mid-air, throw the turnip forward, and then dive onto another turnip. This is very difficult to pull off even just once, and we need to do this the entire way. So once we make it, we need to actually place the turnip in the correct spot. I knew for this moon to be possible, I would need to find a consistent way of putting the turnip in somewhat the same spot every time. Throwing the turnip is always inconsistent, and there's no way of simply setting down the turnip where you're standing. Or is there? When an enemy hits Mario, he drops the turnip straight down, and this is exactly what I needed. So I stood on these question mark blocks, which also don't set your safe spot, and waited until the pan bro threw one of his pans my direction. I then timed walking off the blocks to get hit by the pan mid-air so that Mario would be over the ground when hit, and therefore the turnip would fall straight down onto the floor. And the knockback from the pan would then push Mario back onto the question mark blocks. This was a risky maneuver because if I mistimed it, I would either walk straight onto the ground or the turnip would be destroyed. It was very precise. Now with everything in place, I could then stand on these cheese blocks and try over and over again to get the correct angle with the hover bro. And once I got an angle I thought could work, I just jump into the lava to get bubbled back to the island and wait for the hover bro to make its way to me.
All right, that looks good. It looks good, but we all know that means it doesn't actually... I don't even know what I was going to say with that. But just because it looks good doesn't mean it's actually going to make it, you know? If you look right here, it looks relatively close. But look how far that is. That's how I've messed up so many times, because the depth perception has screwed me over. It looks way closer than it is. This can get it. This can get it. It just all relies on me not being an idiot and capturing at the wrong time, I'm pretty sure. Oh my gosh. I'm going to be spamming snapshot mode. Oh, wait a minute, I need to be over here. No way! No way! Yes! 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 Oh my gosh! That took 62 hours! Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh, yes. Yes! Now, with the hardest moon out of the way, and with Luncheon complete, we can now move on to the next kingdom. But there's nothing really difficult in Ruined Kingdom, so we can just go ahead and move on to Bowser's Kingdom. The first difficult moon in this kingdom is actually on the starting island. Normally, you just hit this button with the Goombas and simply uncapture them to get the moon. Now, it looks like it should be fairly simple to get with the Goomba since they tower over the moon, but there's actually no way to separate the top Goomba from the stack. So for this moon to be possible, we'd have to somehow jump up onto the wall from the ground with a Goomba, which seems way too high of a jump. But surprisingly, it is actually possible to do this, but instead of explaining it, I'll just let you see for yourself. There we go. Let's go. Let's go. Okay. That's actually not that bad. That is not that bad. Another moon I think is worth mentioning is this one right here. The only capture on this island are the Jizos, and their movement is extremely limited. Discovering how to get this moon felt like another giant puzzle that had one very obscure solution that I just luckily stumbled across. I spent hours trying idea after idea, and I was actually on the verge of giving up. But then I had one last stupid idea. If you unload a Jizo by looking away from it, you can move the other Jizo inside of it. This seems useless, but I wondered what would happen if you began running into a wall while inside the Jizo. I had hoped that maybe the other Jizo would push you out on top of it, and then you would be able to bounce off of it and onto the rock. And well, to my surprise, that's exactly what happened. But here's where it gets crazy. When I first tried this, I randomly placed the Jizo next to the rock and tried it. Once it actually worked, I moved the Jizo closer to the rock, thinking that it would make it easier to get up. However, I couldn't get it to work again. I kept moving the Jizo in different places, but I could never replicate what I did the first time, and I had no idea why. Eventually, I decided to look back at my recording and tried putting the Jizo in exactly the same spot I did the first time. Once I did that, it worked again. I tested even more, and from what I can see, I somehow had the perfect spacing from the rock, which made it possible. If the Jizo was any closer or any farther, it just wouldn't have worked. That's why this discovery was so lucky. If I initially had the Jizo in any other spot, my idea would not have worked, and I probably would have assumed it was impossible. But because my spacing was perfect, it worked the first time, and I was able to replicate it again to eventually get the moon. No way. Let's go! Oh my gosh. Yes, 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 yes. Oh my gosh. I cannot believe I just did that. I can Oh my dude, I am getting so lucky with finding these strats. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Moving on to Moon Kingdom, there's really only one moon of interest here, that being the chest moon, which once again makes use of the hover bro. Luckily for us, there's exactly 2 Panbros in this sub area. If you uncapture one of them and place him right here, you can hit the other one into him and just hope you get the right angle. After that, you just patiently wait for him to make his way over and you can grab the moon. And with that, that's actually everything. Mushroom Kingdom doesn't have any real challenges as of yet, so after doing one more sweep and collecting any moons we might have missed, the maximum amount of moons we can get is 377. Yeah, so remember those new discoveries in sand? Well, those were discovered after I already started this run, and since the 2 multi-moons were required when I started, I got both of them, which unlocked the entire rest of the kingdom, hence why I have 42 extra moons. So as much as I hate to say it, my file is officially outdated, so technically no one has completed this run yet, so you could be the first. But it is also important not to forget the multiple different versions of this run. While the total for 1.3 is 377, the total for 1.0 is 381, since there's more glitches available in that version. I should also probably mention that if you were to update the game midway to get 22 Mario moons, the total would then also be 377, since after updating, all the 1.0 exclusive moons would become unavailable again. But these totals aren't set in stone. We're still actively developing new theories for how to prove new moons and save new Mario moons. And like I said before, I'm going to cover all of these in the 3rd and final part to this series. And quickly before I go, I want to thank you all for the overwhelming support on the last video, and I know it took a while for this part to come out, so thanks for also being so patient. I really appreciate it. Hopefully the next video won't take as long to make, but until then, see ya.